board and has not been involved with any of the business of the organization or the association during the campaign, and he'll continue not to be involved with the association until after the election. For that reason, we also thought, even though we're a political organization and typically in this situation we would be looking for which candidates we're going to endorse, we have decided as an organization not to endorse any candidates this year. We do, however, offer this forum so that our candidates for public office can have the opportunity to state their positions and mark their commitments to our organization and to the community about the things that we think are important in matters of public policy. I'd like to thank the city staff for doing the extra work that it takes to get these forums done. I know we're the sixth forum that's taken place, so that doesn't happen without the help of the city staff and without them doing some extra work. Thank you, Brenda Hall, for keeping our time, and our videographer, Gerald Corinder. I'd like to thank my fellow committee members, Nadine Jewell and Susan Miller, for helping me know what to say and how to say it. Any mistakes I make are on them. I'd also like to acknowledge Mayor Miller. Got you while you were standing up. We appreciate you being here, and we appreciate the support that you've pledged for the seniors in this community. As a politically active group of citizens from Norman, our main focus has been to secure both the funding and the site for a state-of-the-art seniors center. It's our hope that the building itself, though, will serve as a facilitator for a better quality of life for everyone in Norman. And what that means to us as citizens is that we anticipate our city will embrace our mission to provide services and programs for Norman seniors and their families that will cross all of the usual barriers such as race, gender, and disability. And because the execution of this effort means so much to our community, we'll be asking for the support of these candidates, and we'll be asking for their commitment to move the budget obligations for the seniors programs from the Parks and Recreation Department, where it now resides, and have those funds budgeted into the city manager's department, where we think that it will have a better chance of being one of the top priorities, and that we will have maybe a more direct line of accountability as we try to execute what is going to be a very important project, and a project that needs to be obviously well executed in order to make it worth all of the effort that our volunteers have expended over the last 4 or 5 or 10 years. The candidates have been given questions and will be given 2 minutes for their responses. The candidates have had plenty of time to look over the questions and come up with their answers, and we did this on purpose. We don't want this to be any sort of a gotcha or an ambush. We really want to know what our candidates' thoughts are regarding the questions that we've presented to them. We don't expect them to have all the same thoughts, but we want to know just how they think that our programs are going to be well served under their tutelage. So now with that, I'm going to try this. There we go. Welcome, candidates. I'll be starting just with Ward 1 and just go on down the line if that's all right with you. And I'm going to take a page out of Caleb Slinkard's playbook for the last forum, and I'll refer to you by your first names, if that's fine. Our first question is a matter of introduction. I'd like to please introduce yourself, letting us know what influenced you to become in public service and just why it was that you decided to run for office. In deciding to run, you must have seen some problems in Norman that you believe you could help address. We'd like to know what those problems are, and we'd like to know how your background has prepared you to address them, what abilities and expertise you have in those areas. So starting with our Ward 1 candidate, Kate Bierman. Can you please give us your introduction?
So as many of you know, I'm Kate Bierman. I've served as the Ward 1 City Council member since July of 2017. And I decided to run after spending several years advocating for our city's animal shelter and the needs in the shelter itself. I walked into the shelter and it was before our new shelter, and it was a dark, dank, sad place to be. And so I applied for and was given a position on the Animal Welfare Oversight Committee. And for the next 2 years, I advocated for a permanent veterinarian on staff, as well as 2 additional kennel technicians and an increase in the food and medical budget. And so that took me to a number of city council meetings, to budget meetings, and to sit in the seats that you're sitting now for about 2 years before I decided that I was going to run for this seat. And so I decided to run because I knew that we were being underrepresented on the east side of Norman. We had seniors who were telling me that they wanted to see the senior center built, and got me up to speed on everything that was going on with the senior center. The cart system underserves the east side. We don't even have a cart stop at our brand new east side library. So clearly this is still a fight we're still having today. And when I decided to run in 2017, I had been for 8 years a manager of issue campaigns at the federal level, working everything from Medicare and Medicaid services to immigration reform. So I learned not only how to handle the details of any particular topic, but then how to craft the policy and get the position that I needed changed. So, that's my background. Those are some of the things that led me to this point. And I'm looking forward to continuing on for a second term, because while I have been engaged in a lot of work to help get the senior center where it is today, as all of you know, we still have more work to do. And I want to be there and have a seat at the table for it.
Thank you. Sean?
I'm Sean Williamson Jennings. It's exciting to be here tonight. I've spent the last 16 years in public service as a training and technical assistance provider in substance abuse prevention. I've had an opportunity to work with states, tribes, and communities for outcomes-based change. In doing so, I've also worked with our federal partners, and it's really given me allowed me to have a great sense of how to be a good steward of public funds. Also, how to build relationships with people in which I have not built relationships with, and how to also be a broker of those relationships. One of them being that I've worked with tribal nations and helped connect them with state organizations, and they're working together and working together well. One of them is the Cherokee Nation in the state of Oklahoma. I mean, they have a model relationship, and I'm excited that I was there at the helm to support them in doing so. So I decided to run because I believe that there's a communication gap between Ward 1 and City Hall. You know, at one point that when I moved to Norman, I realized that the East Side somehow had a bad name. And where I wore this badge of excitement that I lived on the East Side and lived in my new place, I heard people say things that weren't very good about living on the East Side. And then I started to notice that we did have some issues with transportation. Certainly we know we've got issues with stormwater in the city. We have issues with our budget. And I believe that the work that I've done in the past on a federal level, at state communities, tribes, are the things that we need at City Hall to address those issues. City Hall needs a TA provider, someone who is able to take a group of people who want to address serious issues, who come to the table with agendas, and help them mobilize to make change, and a change in which they could not have mobilized alone.
Thank you, Sean. I'm gonna, for Ward 3 and Ward 7, I have a, I have a little schedule laid out here, so I don't know if I'm gonna be able to go right down the line here. Allison, would you give us your introduction, please?
Sure. My name is Allison Patrone, and I'm going to try to keep it on your question. So what influenced me to run for public service? Well, to start with, many of you all did. I was approached and have been approached for several years now, and it wasn't until this point that it was a good time in my life to do so. And so I decided that I could put my name in and hope to be the most help to my community. But what made me take it as seriously this time to do this was seeing a complete breakdown in communication. And it had gotten to the point where even I felt scared to ask a question that I would be construed as attacking in some way. So to write a question, you'd have to preface it with, I'm really being genuine and I'm trying to be kind. Here's my question. So I thought, you know what, this is really getting to the point where we need to mend some fences, and I'm pretty good at being able to do that, to hear people out. As far as my ward particularly, I also wanted to provide representation that to try to explain that it seems like Ward 3 has had a stereotype that is just not realistic. We are a very diverse ward. We aren't just the rich people on the west side. And so I wanted to be able to bring those voices up to the table, to have a voice for them, to be able to hear them out, because I just really felt like it was time to let them be heard. So as far as issues that were happening in the city, CART, Senior Center, we got high-centered and we weren't achieving the agenda. You know, it felt like for about a year that all we talked when the time was up.
Thank you. Thank you. Patrick? Patrick, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you have decided to seek office?
Yes, thank you. I have long known the outcomes of civil participation. When I was very young, I spoke in front of city council to protest a transportation project that would have demolished my house out in Ward 5. And turns out I didn't have to deal with that. They voted it down, and I always thanked myself for that at age 10. But this time, I was asked by a friend to run, and I realized that it would be a wonderful way to continue my history of service. And I believe that I am uniquely suited to address a number of the problems that face the city. I have a background in my legal practice in consumer protection, specifically speaking up for those who are unable to defend themselves, who don't have the resources to be able to participate in the legal process in a fair manner. And the other part of my background in practicing law is with the Public Utility Division of the Corporation Commission, where we stood in place of market competition and helped provide a balancing factor, which introduced me to very technically complex and intricate law. And those kinds of administrative and regulatory practices, I believe I can bring to the city council and use those to best further the city's agenda and to be an active participant in shaping policy. But mostly, I'm excited to run because I'm a lifelong resident of Norman and I love this city and I want to give back to it. And I want to give back to the community that helped to raise me and help make me the person who I am today. And I'm excited to work with each and every one of you, not just in Ward 3, but in the friends that I meet all throughout the city in order to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Happy to, Bob. I want to start with my background. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in economics from Oklahoma City University. and an MBA from the University of Portland. I served in the Air National Guard in Oklahoma and Oregon for a total of 6 years. My work background includes 16 years at AT&T in various management positions in 7 locations around the United States. I also spent 12 years in executive sales and marketing positions in the computer industry at 4 U.S. locations. My wife, Connie, and I spent 2 years in Singapore while working for Tandem Computers International. I was also the managing director for Scient, an internet consulting firm in Austin, Texas. My volunteer activities have included the United Way, the Lions Club, serving on the board of directors of the Austin Entrepreneurials Foundation, Norman Regional Hospital, and most recently serving as chairman of Norman Seniors Association. It was in this position with the Norman Seniors Association that got me involved in local politics. In working with the city council, I became aware of the many problems the city faces, and I also realized that there is no one on the council today that has the kind of work and life experiences that I have. I felt like my background could add to the total experience of the city council team, and I decided to run. The biggest problem facing the city is the general budget deficit. The official projections generated by the city show a $20 million total deficit for this year and for the next 5 years. We cannot allow that to happen. Also, the next council will have to build solid relationships with the new city manager and city attorney while repairing strained relationships with almost all of our working partners. Third, we need to bring a robust economic development program aimed at bringing higher paying jobs to the city of Norman. So that's what I want to try to do, is join the team called the City Council and work on fixing the structural issues in the budget, building solid relationships between the City Council and all of our partners, and working to grow the city in terms of jobs that improve the overall standard of living in our community.
Thank you. On to our Ward 7 candidates. Kim, I'd like to start with you. Would you please introduce yourself and let us know some of the things that influenced you and some of the passions that drive you to want to serve on the city council?
Okay, thank you, Bob. I'm Kim Blodgett. I am a teacher for NPS here in Norman. I teach at Jefferson and I teach 4th grade. We each have different stories about how we all got into public service, and I'm sure there's a variety of things that motivate us, but we all have a common goal. We are all in a place where change can happen. It is a place where real leadership matters when you are on city council, and it is a place where one good idea can touch the lives of all Norman residents. Public service is my passion. Before I became a teacher, I worked in a hospital in the emergency room for 6 years. I worked in nursing homes, and I worked in a domestic violence shelter. I've had several jobs as I was a single mom putting myself through college. I am a certified foster parent and now an adoptive parent. Public service is my mission. I decided one day that I wanted to live on purpose. One of my goals, elected or not, is to ensure that Norman becomes a more inclusive city. How do we do this is first acknowledging that Norman does have room to grow when it comes to inclusiveness. Second, we need to focus on public transportation, access for everyone. Third, we need to invest in our people. And fourth, we need to ensure that everyone in Norman's voice is heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen, can you give us some insights into why you're continuing to run for office?
Yes. For everybody that does not know me, my name is Stephen Tyler Holman. I'm the current Ward 7 City Council member. I was first elected in 2013. I am from Norman. I'm the 4th generation of my father's side of the family to call Norman home. My great-grandfather owned a small business on Main Street for many years before he retired here in Norman. My grandfather worked at Central State Hospital for 42 years after retiring from there here in Norman. And my father worked at Central State for a while when I was a kid. He graduated from Norman High in 1981 and is planning to retire here in Norman as well here in a few years. I first ran for city council because I had been active in what was going on in Norman for a while. I had been watching city council meetings for a long time. I've always been very interested in things like city planning and architecture. And I had been coming to the meetings for a long time, and a senior citizen and longtime community activist named Mary Francis sent me a message on Facebook one day back in June of 2010 saying that she didn't believe that Ward 7 council member Doug Cubberly was going to run for re-election next time, and she thought I should think about doing it. So that's why I first ran. I'm running again because I've been on the city council for almost 6 years now. If reelected, that will be 3 years more than anybody else on the current council. And I believe with the amount of issues that we have and how big those issues are, that we need somebody like myself on this council that has the historical knowledge and experience to help guide us to solutions for these issues. And that's what I plan to do. I think my background on the council for the last 6 years has shown my support for the issues we're dealing with, like stormwater and the senior center especially. And I think I have shown an ability and an expertise to bring solutions and work with many different minds.
Thank you. Kyle, thanks for your patience in waiting to be the last asked.
Okay, thank you, Bob, and thank you, Seniors Association, for hosting this. I'm happy to be here. About me, as I've said at the other forums, I'm a lifelong Norman citizen. I went to Norman High School. I received my undergraduate from the University of Oklahoma, my MBA from Southern Nazarene. Earlier, I had received my paramedic certificate from Oklahoma City Community College. I served as an assistant manager at Westwood Pool, so I've been a city employee in the past. So I love the Parks and Recreation Department. I love what they've done with Westwood Water Park. It looks fantastic. The things, a little bit about me as far as like why I believe that I am qualified to run for this, and also why I'm asking for the vote for Ward 7 citizens, is because one of the things that I know that I possess is leadership. One of the things that I believe that the city council really needs at this time, when we are seeing people of differing opinions, when we're seeing different Norman entities not working as well with the city council, we need good, strong leadership. So how am I qualified? I believe serving as a paramedic for 15 years and 3 of those as an EMS supervisor for this town have shown that my leadership qualities have definitely come out. I have worked every major tornado for the past 2 decades. The May 20th tornado, 2013, that took out the Moore Medical Center, as well as killing many school children up in Moore. I was put in charge of EMS operations up there. So I quickly had to mobilize and coordinate with local law enforcement, the fire department, the police, with other EMS agencies, with the Warren Theater, and quickly had to formulate a plan. It takes leadership in those times. And it wasn't just me making all the decisions. It is working with other key individuals so that we can collaborate together. Those are the lessons that I've learned while I've worked at Norman Regional Health System, which has worked as a great partner with other entities such as the United Way, the Red Cross, OBI, the Norman Police Department, Griffin. And so I believe taking those, my background with that will help me be well suited for the city council.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's go to our very first question about policy. Part of our frustration as a group of advocates, as seniors, is that it's taken us 4 years to get to this point, and really longer than that for some of the longer standing seniors that have been working on this much longer. We believe that's too long. We believe that that's too long to require citizens to remain engaged and passionate about just trying to get to this point where we now have, we're relatively sure that we have the funding and the site for the senior center, but we during this 4 years, we feel like we've also maybe lost some time that would have been better used for planning, for engineering, for having some sort of plan going forward for how to serve the seniors better. We think that one of the problems here in Norman is the institutional resistance that citizen-led initiatives quite often meet. The best example before the seniors came along was the animal shelter. The library received a lot of institutional resistance, but the animal shelter advocates made attempt after attempt and finally got a sort of a portion of what they were attempting to get. The question is, how would you as a council member address the problem that institutional resistance poses for citizen-led initiatives in Norman? Or do you disagree that we have a problem of institutional resistance? Is this a satisfactory process in your opinion? Sean, you're the first to get to answer that question for Ward 1.
Thank you. You all, one of the things that I want to begin with saying is that you truly are the heroes here. That none of us can take credit for all the work that you all have done as seniors on this process, in this process. When I see the word resistance and institutional, we certainly know it's more than just one organization at City Hall or just the staff here at City Hall. I see it as a community resistance in this instance, as well as the Animal Welfare Center instance. And when it's a community resistance, I want to stand here today and say, I'm sorry. There are 3 things that you should do when you say you're sorry as a community for being resistant. One is to be remorseful. And the more I looked into this, the more remorseful I was that this has taken too long. You know, Bob talks about 4 years, but we know back in 2008, you all were fighting for a senior center. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we as a community let you down, because we say that Norman's inclusive and that we care about people across the lifespan. And I'm sorry we didn't. Now, the second step is just to simply say you're sorry. But the third one is to tell you how we will not trespass against you again. One is that we'll ensure that there is dollar bills connected to anything that we approve. 2, that we will communicate with you early and often. That we'll do the footwork for you. I don't think that it's okay that anybody is asked to go talk to the Attorney General. I think that city staff, that council members go for you or with you so that you can address the issue. You all, I also want you to know that finally that you are valued. I don't believe that there's anybody sitting here right now that's not remorseful, that it has taken so long for us to get to this point. So know that I'm sorry. And should I get elected, and even if I'm not, I've got you back.
Thank you, Sean. Kate, how are you going to help us face up against the institutional resistance that we've gotten accustomed to?
So I think first and foremost, it's important to recognize that institutional resistance breeds mistrust in city government. When we have to get to the point where initiatives are led by citizens and not going through the regular budget process to accomplish a goal, that means that the city government has failed you. It has failed to recognize the importance of a particular issue to the community and has failed to act. And that's part of what we went through with the animal shelter and what we're going through now with the senior center. And so I will say that I think, especially in the last 6 to 12 months, we have taken some steps to start to erode that institutional resistance. We've had some changes in top city leadership. And, you know, a part of the reason why I was supportive of some of that turnover is because I think we need to do a better job of having City Hall be more responsive to the people. We seem to have a culture of no here at the city in a number of ways, instead of figuring out how to get to yes. It might not be an easy yes. Not everything can just be automatically approved, but the default answer has been no. And we've seen that even as council members facing that institutional resistance when, you know, an OG&E franchise agreement is given to us and it's a 25-year agreement and we're told just to rubber stamp it, pass it on. That's what every community does. That's what needs to be done. Being willing to push back against that is what council members can do. Doing things like identifying a site and a funding source for a senior center and breaking the stalemate through a rule of 3 is sometimes what needs to be done. It's not always going to be pleasant. It might be messy, but in the end, the way to rebuild some of that public trust is to recognize that sometimes you just need to take action. Analysis paralysis is a very real thing. You can analyze something to death, but in the end, sometimes you just have to take some concrete steps and recognize that you might not be truly getting back to public trust.
Thank you, Kate. Richard, what are your thoughts about the nature of the length of time that it's taken us and the resistance that we've encountered.
Okay, thanks, Bob. There is institutional resistance in the city of Norman, but I believe it is purely a matter of culture. Let me say that I've worked with many city employees, and I've found all of them to be extremely talented, professional, courteous, and dedicated to doing their job. However, I believe the culture they work in is one of defensibility, and it has been created over the years by various city councils and the city manager. In a culture of defensibility, you do your job in a manner that protects the results of your individual work from questions from the outside. When I did my master's work at the University of Portland, I wrote a thesis on employee motivation. I actually went into a manufacturing company and worked with a department of about 25 people, changing work rules and standards to see what effects there were on productivity. All of my work can be boiled down to one word: pride. If you create a working environment where the employee can be proud of what they did to help the team, there is no limit to human achievement. In that culture, the team creates the defensibility of your work. Cultures can be changed. It's really not that hard, but it starts at the top, and in this case, the top is the city council. For example, the city council could work within the vision of building an inclusive community and create a process that assigns a citizen-led initiative like the Senior Center to a city employee, and that city employee becomes a team leader assigned to achieve that vision with that project. If you think about that a little bit, it becomes easy to see all the benefits. You have a single point of contact. One person vets input. You have a team approach, and maybe even the members get to wear a badge. That might sound corny, but it works. If you do this a few times with the success, and the employees who contributed to that success are proud of what got done, then you have a new culture. We can do that in Norman, and we need to get to work on it right now.
Thank you. Patrick, what do you think about the length of time that it's taken us to get this done?
I think that when it comes to institutional resistance, there are two different ways that it happens. One is can't, and the other is won't. Can't is a little harder to address sometimes because it includes impossibilities of law or impossibilities of physics. You can't build a library on a floodplain. But it's still something that can be chipped away at through efforts to change things at the state level or the federal level. And even city policy can be rewritten if need be. But the big problem is won't. And that's when you have answers like it costs too much, or it's not practical, or we don't have time. These are excuses that are given to avoid making difficult decisions and taking steps down roads that are not easy to walk. And I think that's part of what has happened over and over with this senior center, is that there have been so many instances where someone has said, well, we won't do it. And that's been the prevailing wind. So as a city council member, what I would do is I would work to change those won'ts into, yeah, this is an opportunity. Let's take this challenge. Let's take the difficulties that are being posed to us and use them to our benefit. Let's take input from individuals with different perspectives. Let's listen to our citizens and use those ideas to help come up with creative solutions to make our way around these barriers to progress. I think that with working with city staff, with carefully examining what resistance there is as far as the unwillingness rather than the impossibilities, is what will allow us to get more done in a shorter amount of time.
Thank you, Patrick. Allison?
So I guess I would like to start by saying that citizen-led petitions, especially in this case, and the senior center having been passed twice, they're mandates. I mean, it couldn't be any more clear what the people of this city have said with respect to a senior center. So in a lot of ways, I agree with Patrick here that it was, we just don't want to, was kind of the answer that the seniors keep getting. Or when you send something to a ballot that's unfunded, that felt like trickery. All of these different areas when we talk about the senior center and institutional resistance. I also agree with my partner over here as well when he talks about that city council is at the top. Well, the top is the leaders, and they need to act like that. And I appreciated Kate's message earlier when she said at some point you just have to act, and she's unapologetic for the rule of three, because that's true. When you've gotten the runaround so many times, you do have to be the one that says, okay, we got the mandate from the people, we have to act. So I would like to say that when I've been at the doorsteps, people aren't sad, they're angry about this issue, and rightfully so. I'm with them. They are saying, why have you been collecting taxes all this time and haven't started? Why are we still talking about it and nothing's happened? And I believe that the people deserve an answer to that, and that we should be breaking ground. I'm glad that we have the site picked, and it sounds like that we're moving forward. But the runaround time is over, and that is institutional resistance. Us lawyers, we like to give fancy terms to things, and we created the red tape, so we know how to fix it, by the way. But it is a runaround. That's what it is. And it's time that we all stand up and say, no more. Build the senior center and build it now.
Thank you. Stephen, I know you've been around for a while, so you've become familiar with our quest. What do you think?
So I'm going to go back to 2008. On that ballot, there was a library proposal, and that library proposal failed by less than 300 votes. If that proposal had passed, the senior center would be today in a remodeled library building next door. And so because that library vote failed, we obviously could not remodel that building into a senior center. So a few years later, when Norman Forward came about, which was a citizen-led initiative, and a group of senior citizens came forward and said, you guys, you're going to build all these other new facilities for these other groups. We would like to have one too. And for the majority of council, including myself at the time, we agreed that that sounded like a good idea. Initially, we really wanted it to be next to the new library or as centrally located as possible. That was something we worked on for quite a long time. We're not ever able to get to that point. But we have, I think, the benefit of it taking this long is that if we'd have done it 10 years ago, it'd be in a remodeled library building. If we'd have done it 3 years ago, I think we'd have a really nice senior activity center. But because of what we've seen Oklahoma City do with these senior wellness centers, I think what we're going to have now is a much better product that's going to better serve our senior citizens for decades compared to what we would have had just a few years ago. When it comes to accountability, I think what this council has done when we've seen this kind of resistance that's mentioned here is we have made big changes in staff leadership over the last year when it comes to the city manager, the city attorney, and our city planner. There was a environment of resistance, I feel, institutionally to some of these issues and these plans. And I think council members that were resistant to those issues have been unelected out of this council. And so I think we have done that when we've seen this resistance, and we're going to keep pushing to make sure this.
Thank you. Thank you. Kyle?
Thank you, Bob. So first I would like to talk about citizen-led initiatives. And I think we've seen in this town what happens when citizens get together and they come forward with a passion and they get council behind them. So let's take a look at the Norman Ford project. I mean, I think that has been going really well. That was citizen-led. As I mentioned before, the Westwood Water Park and all the other initiatives, and plus the senior center being put into this, along with the indoor aquatics facility and the multi-sports complex. This shows what happens when Norman citizens can get together, be on the same page, and move in the forward direction with council buy-in. Let's also take a look at what happened here this past year with the DeBar Street name changing. I went into that very skeptical about, like why we needed to change that. I came to the council meetings and I found out, I listened to people and why they were passionate about changing a street name, and it was so important to them, and they changed my mind. And so I'm big time in favor of citizen-led initiatives. But what does that require on the council's portion? It requires advocates. And so one of the things, Bob, that you had mentioned before is having an advocate for seniors. I think that Mr. Bailey, having previously served as a chairman, I think that makes it, the reason why he is running, one of the reasons why I believe he's running is for this very issue. for myself, I have parents who are seniors. Sorry, Mom, didn't mean to refer your age there. And so, but I'm passionate about taking care of, our generation that has given so much back to us. So with respect to institutional-led resistance, how can we change that? I think on the council, we need to have advocates. What can you all do about institutional resistance? Get out and vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Kim?
Okay, thank you, Bob. First off, I feel like I should apologize for my excessive yawning. All I can say is that I am a teacher of fourth graders and I have a sick child at home. So, but as far as institutional resistance goes, I feel like it can be present in any organization, sadly, whether it's a school, business, or government. Hearing all of these amazing answers reminded me of the teacher walkout, where we obviously that resistance was on a state level, but we were definitely met with lots of resistance. We had things that we wanted, funding for our schools, and yeah, lots of resistance there. So that's just what this reminded me of. And an important way to deal with it is to create, I think, action items out of meetings or plans, have deadlines, scheduled updates so that progress can clearly be measured and defined and people can be held accountable. Cities have the capability of providing something for everybody when and only when they are created by everybody. We need to be empowering our citizens to recreate our cities. And I agree with so much of what everyone else up here said. And I definitely agree with Allison that we just need to build the senior center now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. In my opening remarks, I referred to our desire to get a commitment from the candidates regarding the department under which the new senior facility and hopefully new seniors programs would be executed and shepherded. We feel like right now the seniors programs are certainly not on the front burner. And being in Parks and Recreation, they probably have to compete with an awful lot of important things that are going on in that department. So our thoughts are that we would be better served if this, with the execution of not just the building, but actually what the building is going to do for our community, if that was under the aegis of the city manager himself or herself. Would you be willing to move the budget for the senior center and its programs to the city manager's department so that it wouldn't be in competition with other city departments for funding, and hopefully would be more directly accountable to the citizenry in terms of execution? And that question goes first to Kate.
Make sure that my timer is up there. So I fully understand the frustration around this issue. I have felt similarly about the animal shelter being under the police department for a variety of reasons. It also tends to not rise to the top in terms of the priority list. But before I talk about the specific ask, I also want to be sure that everyone knows that the competition is going to happen no matter what department it's in. We only have one city budget, and everything has to go through the city manager and then to city council. Moving it to its own department or under the city manager will certainly help, but it will not solve the problem of competition. All the departments in some way compete with each other because we have a defined budget, and every single department is seeking their piece of the pie. So to the specific question, I definitely think it's worthy of consideration. I do also I've been entertaining the idea of a community services department and doing something like moving the animal shelter out of the police department, moving the senior center out of Parks and Recreation, because I certainly don't think that it is a good fit there. So that's a conversation that I'd love to have. Y'all know I'm perfectly willing to make commitments when I think it's an easy commitment to make. I want to have this conversation, but I do also think that maybe instead of being under the city manager, it needs to be in its own department with its own advocate to the city manager. So I'm not going to give a flat out yes, but I want to continue to have this conversation because I do think that the end goal could also be achieved in a different way.
Thank you very much, Kate. Sean, what are your thoughts on our request for a commitment?
I love this question because this goes right into what I do. It's my wheelhouse. It's training and technical assistance. And so one of the first things I tell folks when they're looking at their program, and I say, look, show success, show the data of how people want this, and then make sure you are a line item on the big budget. And so this is important that you all become a line item on the city manager's budget. It's important for, as Kate said, there's still going to be competition. It's a budget. So we know that that's going to be the case. But what it does do is it puts it into the forefront of people's minds. We know that if money comes or money goes, that the public's eye can be very trained on these dollars. We also know that there are 24 accounts with the city. And so another account, just seeing another line item that says seniors, it also rebuilds our trust. So that seniors can actually see that here I am and I can account for my money and I know that it is coming. And if I need to compete, this is a citizen-led initiative anyway, I can go out and continue to compete for those dollars. The other reason why it's important is, and that I love it, it's because you all are thinking towards the future. So we know that we have a budget problem right now, but should our budget rebound, and Norman's a resilient city, and it will, then what we'll have an opportunity to do in the future with this is say that we need to expand operations. We need to hire new team members. And we are a big part of just advocating for these dollar bills. So absolutely, because, in my profession outside of this, this is exactly what I tell people to do. Make sure you are a line item on the big budget. So all eyes.
Thank you. Patrick?
The short answer is yes. These issues are about security, they're about trust, about knowing that the funding that's been promised is going to continue to be there, that it's going to continue to be a priority in the budget. And I think that one good way of doing that is by making it a larger priority and by making it its own entity, by separating it from Parks and Recreation Department, putting it under the city manager, and putting a heavier emphasis on making sure that funds are available when we say they're available. It's been part of this whole debacle this entire time, is that when the money's supposed to be there, it isn't. And that's, no matter what your circumstance, that's a terrifying thing. It's not just about the senior center, it's about the funding for the projects that are going to be ongoing, the projects that we're going to be relying on. I want to see these programs that we're putting into place now still around when I'm a senior. I want that funding to be guaranteed. So I think that we should move it to the city manager's office and make that security happen.
Thank you, Patrick. Allison, what are your thoughts about moving the budgeted funds out of Parks and Recreation and into the city manager's fund?
So right away, my thoughts are, I'm not sure why it would be under Parks and Recreation to begin with. It doesn't seem to me like it even falls there at all. But, I'm assuming that the group has thought this through for the city manager's office. For me, what it seems like is that I like the idea of having a new department that would be, something like public health and wellness, and that perhaps we could put some other things that fall in a like category as well, that are more tailored, like ADA accommodations, because right now those aren't getting, they're getting swallowed up as well and not getting the attention that they need, similar to the senior center. and we're also have a funding issue when it comes to mental health and addiction services. These are all senior center and wellness center. These are public health issues to me. I mean, these are something that we want to encourage the quality of life of our people and the wellness of our people. So whether or not it goes under the city manager's budget as that line item, or whether or not we create a new department that is answering the call to a lot of left behind areas, that's up for discussion, but certainly it doesn't belong in the parks.
Thank you. Thank you, Allison. Richard?
Thank you, Bob. Well, first, there are two budgets that we have to talk about. The first part is the capital budget, which is provided by the half-cent dedicated sales tax through Norman Ford. I would not do anything with that. That will stay in the Norman Ford fund, which is dedicated, as I said, and it will continue to be operated and with the oversight board for the Norman Ford committee, a citizen board to ensure that gets spent the right way. But for the operating budget, I believe that long-term, the operating budget will not be 100% provided by the city, but the portion that will come from the city also comes from the general fund, and no matter what department it's in, it faces competition for general fund allocation. So I would support creating a seniors affairs department reporting to the city manager to raise the priority of that operating system budget and how it gets addressed when it goes through the budgeting process at the finance department. But in my mind, that department would be responsible for much more than just the senior center. It would be responsible for focusing on all senior issues. There are 26,000 seniors in Norman, and they deserve a seniors affairs department reporting to the city manager to focus on all the things that are important to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Kyle, what are your thoughts on this topic?
As I've pondered this over the past week, I've thought about, really what is the purpose of this? What is the purpose in moving the budget from the Parks and Rec department over to the city manager's office? And I believe that the purpose of that, the intention, as I'm reading you all on this, is to remain relevant and to remain on the forefront. And so I think there are ways to do that without moving it to the city manager's office. But as Councilmember Bierman said earlier, I'm absolutely open to that. And so now, we've heard, does it make sense to keep it underneath the Parks and Rec department? Yes, no. So if things move forward with, acquiring the land acquisition up on North Base by the YMCA, and then also putting a multi-sports aquatic facility, which would be under the rec department, and also putting the aquatic center and the multi-sports complex up there, both of those would be underneath the recreation department. If we're talking about the marrying of those three entities, to me, it makes most sense to keep this within the Parks and Recreation department because they would know how to marry those three the best. If that is not the consensus of the city staff, or if coming back to this group, if we think that in order to remain most relevant to move it to the city manager's department, then that makes the most sense to me. But nothing is off the table for me. But I would want to also sit down with city staff to see what makes most sense to them. But I agree with everyone else in that it's still going to be competing with the general fund dollars. So how do we keep it remaining relevant? Going back to what I said for the first question, which is you need to have good advocates at city council, and I believe I can be that advocate for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Kim, how would you help us secure our relevance, as Kyle so aptly put it?
Thank you, Bob. I would be definitely would be willing to look into moving the budget. My concern would only be not creating more expenses administratively. If we moved it out of Parks and Rec, where systems are kind of already in place there. I agree with several of the other candidates on the panel of taking it out of Parks and Rec and kind of putting it in its own umbrella. So I know that I have heard from several that do wish for it to be moved out of the Parks and Rec. the most important thing to me is that wherever it is, it's fair and it's balanced. And but I do believe that the city needs to take steps to rebuild that trust. 4 years is way too long. And so if this is one of the steps that could start rebuilding that trust, it definitely deserves attention. I mean, we need to quit sending the message to this population of people that they're not valued, because that just isn't so. And to me, if we keep giving them no's, you are telling them you do not value them. And so this definitely deserves the attention. So thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Stephen, I know you've seen a few budgets. You know how important the city manager's budget is. Council's pay, I think, resides there.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on us occupying the same space?
So I think if it makes it more transparent, I would definitely support moving it to the city manager's budget. If it makes it easier for people to understand that budget, I do agree with Councilmember Bierman that it still would have to be competing for general fund dollars. In the end, it really is a matter of city council priority, because no matter what budget the city manager comes up with, the city council has the power to alter that budget any way that we think is most appropriate. So whatever we think is the priority is what gets the money, regardless of what the city manager or department heads think. And so when we have a new senior citizens center, senior citizens wellness center that might have some of the things that we're talking about putting into it, it's going to need a significant staff increase and the programming part of it. And this city council, they're going to have to make it a priority to fund that staffing and those programs so that we avoid the problems that we have seen with the Animal Welfare Center. We were very excited to build the new Animal Welfare Center. We needed it badly. People were passionate about it. But one thing the city did not do was properly plan for the operations of that new facility and the fact that it would be bigger than the one that we had before. So I don't want to make that same mistake again. And as a member of the city council, I will make it a priority when it comes budget time to make sure that new facility is properly funded and operating the way it needs to serve our senior citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Our next question on the questionnaire that you were sent out has a reference to a direct reference to when you take over as mayor, and for some of you that's going to be a while. But we're still a weak mayor system of government, and so the mayor occupies a vote and each of the council members occupies a vote. So I think that the question is still relevant. We'd like to know what your thoughts are about the existing framework for planning for the new senior center. What is the role of the ad hoc committee? And how will the selection of an architect work? What is being done about planning programs? And that's kind of an important aspect of our task. You know, we don't just want a building that sits there and does nothing that the other one didn't used to do. What should be the role of the general citizenry in this process? And when you take over as a city council person, how will you shape that process or attempt to shape that process? And I believe, Sean, you have the first response, please.
All right. That's a lot of questions all at once. And so
you don't, I'll say you don't have to answer all of those. It's just kind of.
Okay. So I certainly understand that we're on a timeline and that we've acquired the MOU. and that by 2022, all of this area will have the indoor aquatic center, the senior center, as well as the multi-sports facility. But one of the things I want to focus on is this ad hoc committee. We certainly understand that the ad hoc committee began meeting last week for some visioning. I think they said it was more of a meet and greet than anything. But one of the things that I would suggest, and again, putting on my TA hat in terms of that ad hoc committee, is how do you get other citizens to participate and be a part of this? And so what I would suggest that you all do, and purely just a suggestion, is to create another small committee. And it's a small committee that if you want to engage young people, like you've said you wanted to engage young people, to invite them to that that sort of engagement. It would be nice to get an appointment from a mayor and participate in sort of thinking about the programming. We know that you all want a wellness center and not simply a place to play canasta or do Tai Chi, but a place in which you all can work out together and build a sense of community. I know that you also have said that you wanted to get more people in to participate. I think that it would be very neat if we had ward meetings, at least a combined ward meeting at the senior center. So all wards coming together to encourage people to be a part of the senior center, as well as getting family members in there so that they can encourage their loved ones to be a part of it. In terms of the RF or the architectural work, I know that there will be an RFP that goes out. We certainly, at the end of the day, just want to make sure that seniors create or.
Thank you, Sean. That is a valiant attempt to answer way too many questions. I'm sorry about that. Kate, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, first, my thought is 2 minutes is definitely not long enough. But so, one of the things we start with is the architectural firm selection. We send it out by RFQ. So we're actually selecting this based on the quality of the firm and not an actual proposal. We kind of hammer out the funding of it later and the cost of that firm later. And so then that architecture firm will go into the master planning process with the ad hoc committee, and that'll take several months. And then we go into the design process, and that'll take a year. And then we go into the facility and infrastructure construction, and that will take about a year. And so we're looking at hopefully a ribbon cutting for the senior center in the fall of 2021. But in terms of the ad hoc committee, one of the things I think we need to do is like I've heard already, is engage more seniors in the process. One of the easiest ways we can do that is make sure that the contact information for the ad hoc committee members is available on the city's website and any material that we put out about the senior center, so that anyone who's interested in having a say in the design will know who to reach out to. And of course, as I always say, when you're reaching out to the city, CC your city council member on it, because if they don't actually see the information, then they don't know that that's out there, that's your desire. And so what I'd also like to see is some outreach into some of the senior living communities that we have here in Norman. I've had 2 sit downs with 2 of the senior living complexes in Ward 1, and they have heard about the senior center. They know that it's coming, but they don't know much about the process. Many of them don't get the newspaper. Many of them are not, super computer savvy. And so they need to be plugged into the process as well. And so we need to make sure that our outreach with Norman residents is intentional, and that we're not just checking the box and saying that we're getting community feedback through an ad hoc committee that no one can reach out to and share their thoughts with. So that's pretty much all I can get to in 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Allison, if you're elected, how will you try to help shape this process and hopefully the outcomes?
Thank you. So something about me that many of you probably don't know is that I actually have worked as an activities director in a retirement center. And I can tell you that my experience there leads me to say we need an excellent on-site staff. That the activities director isn't just somebody that you pick up off the street and give them a $7 an hour job. It needs to be somebody who knows what they're doing, they're energetic, they're compassionate, and they're dedicated to this with a very creative mind. Because what we don't want is boredom. When we are talking about how do we make this a success, the ad hoc committee is huge. And I do think that we need to really foster diversity within the age demographic of the ad hoc community as well, or committee as well. By that, I mean different interests. What are different pastimes? What would you like to see be brought into this facility? And then the other part of what I would say is we need to think about adding services as well. If you want it to be something that it doesn't age out, as like you were saying, it's boring after a certain period of time, offer value as well to our citizens by saying, okay, maybe we add PT and OT services, maybe we do a pharmacy. There are all kinds of ideas that we can implement that will save our people money, would be the idea. We give them the value of having that service inside the facility to get them in, get them part of the community, and it makes their quality of life more robust in this city. That is the idea. So I guess I'm gonna leave it there without overly complicating it, since she went through the construction process.
Thank you, Allison. Richard, how would you help shape this?
Okay, Bob. Well, first, the Norman Forward Citizens Ad Hoc Advisory Group, as it's formally called, for the Senior Center, which hasn't met, by the way, since 2016, has been revitalized under the new leadership of Gail Hobson, and it held its first meeting on January 31st. I sat on that committee along with 2 other members of the board of the Norman Seniors Association. This committee will be responsible for driving the planning of the implementation of the 21st Century Senior Center. There are 2 major actions underway right now. First, the work to select a firm to do the master planning for all 3 Norman Forward projects has started. This will get the planning underway for the entire site, including how it works with various transportation needs. The second activity is something that's been driven by Mayor Miller since last July and August. It is a major day-long envisioning conference involving national leaders in the 21st century senior development. This conference will be for the public, and it will include presentations and workshops. It has been tentatively planned for March 22nd, or at least late March, at the Norman Regional Hospital Conference Center on Porter. The purpose of this envisioning conference is to bring the best national experts together with the citizens of Norman to begin the process of developing a short-term and long-term set of objectives for the center. Many of you have heard me talk about the differences between the 1965 model of a senior center and the 2003 model of the senior center as defined by Congress. The only thing I want to comment on them here is the difference in target markets. The senior center we have now, a 1965 model, targets people in the last decade of their life, which is about 4,000 people. The new model targets people in the last 25 years of the lifespan, which is 26,000 people in the city of Norman. So we have to take the input and get 26,000 people involved in this process.
Patrick, would you like to take at least one aspect of that large question and address it?
I'll dive right in. I like what Richard's saying, but I think it doesn't go far enough. I think we need to involve all 130,000 members of Norman's community in this. I think it's appropriately named as a multi-generational facility. It's not just for our seniors, it's for everyone who interacts with them, which is our entire community. I think that the role of the citizenry in this is going to be involving as many different demographics of our community as we can. Certainly, you know, I bring the average age of this room down by about 10 years, but I want to be involved. I want to know what programs I can participate in that where I can interact with this great source of knowledge, of fun, and this community that's being built. And to do that, I think we need a broad set of input. I think the ad hoc committee is a fantastic start. I think that if they're wise, they'll reach out to members of the community as a whole. I think that outreach is very important, not only to educate the population about what exactly we're putting in, but also to draw them into the process themselves, find out what kind of programs people will participate in. We can plan all we want, but if nobody shows up to the ideas that we have, we need to go back to the drawing board. And I think we can avoid that by including the community as a whole from the very beginning. I would also just love to see this go to a Norman architectural firm. I know that there's a specific process for soliciting these bids, but I'd like to keep it local. I would love to see a community center that is entirely from start to finish a Norman idea. And I think that's what we're working towards. And I think that with community input, we can make that happen.
Thank you, Patrick. Kyle?
I'm ready, Bob. I like what already has been said. I think the current process that has been put into place with the ad hoc committee, I definitely would want to support that process. As we move from, as we look at, should this be a senior center? Should this be a senior wellness center? I like the idea of wellness because it's in the mission of Norman Regional Health System, which is health and wellness. And so, and on that note, I would also want to make sure that the ad hoc committee in the envisioning of this process is working with other Norman entities that would partner with that. So when we talk about a senior wellness center. So we talk about a senior center, that's keeping it relevant, but a senior wellness center takes it to a whole different level. And so I think that partnering with the right agencies, of course, I'm going to put a plug for my employer, Norman Regional Health System, I think, but there's others as well, I think would be a very good step. As far as including those within the ad hoc committee, I think there's one group that we definitely need to remember is let's go over and talk to the seniors who are actually using the senior center right now and gather their input. I was actually over there speaking with Sandy today, and I was speaking with several of the people who were at the senior center and what sort of the things that they like, and they like exactly what they have right now. And so let's make sure that services that are being offered currently at the senior center today would still be used over at the new center, as well as thinking forward about people who will be seniors and the rest of the community so that we are making this an all-inclusive organization. And so the other thing that I would also want to make sure of is the budget. Currently, there is no budget for the senior center within the Norman Ford project. And as a budget guy, that definitely concerns me. And so I would want to make sure that we are budgeting appropriately, responsibly, so that this is that this new senior wellness center is something that will be able to be maintained in this budget and future budgets. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Stephen, how would you attempt to shape this as we go forward?
So it's been mentioned the existing framework is basically now that we pretty much know where we're building it at, we have a budget, we have money that we freed up to pay for this through savings on other Norman Forward projects. A year to design, a year to construct it. So looking at maybe the fall of 2021 is what we've been told. I would like to maybe see the design process not take a year. I think I would love to have a Norman architect do it, of course, but I also do want to make sure that whoever it is does have a background in building this type of facility and knows really what they're doing. Again, looking at some of what Oklahoma City has done with their new facilities, they have constructed 3 of them so far. They are going to be opening a 4th one later this year, and they are in the planning processes for a 5th one to open in 2021 also. So I think we could see some time savings if we look at some of what they've done and borrow some of the ideas. The ad hoc committee for me is half of our city council, for those of you who don't know, is under 35 years old. And I do like the idea of building a facility that's still going to be functional and relevant when I'm old enough to be a senior citizen. But I'm relying on this ad hoc committee to tell me exactly what do they want out of this facility, what do they want it to look like, how should it operate, what programs should be in it, so that I can work from the city council standpoint with the budget and the planning with city staff to make that a reality. And the general citizenry, I mean, this is going to be another people's building paid for by public tax dollars that hopefully everybody in Norman that decides to grow up and retire here will use someday. So we need to be listening to as many people as possible to get the best possible facility that is going to serve our citizens for the next 40 to 50 years, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Kim, what does it mean for you that, especially for our general citizenry, to be involved in the process, and how would you try to shape that going forward?
Thank you, Bob. Well, as a teacher, I'm going to put my teacher hat on here for a minute, because in a perfect world, I would love to see a preschool there The research is there that putting preschools in assisted living centers is a huge deal, and for both populations of people. So my dream would be adding a preschool there. I will come work there. It would be great. Anyway, the role of the committee to me is to represent the public and their voice. To me, they play kind of the middleman between bringing back to the council the input from the senior community in Norman. The committee is there to ensure that every voice is heard. And when it comes to the implementation of the senior center, the finalization of it, what is it going to offer? So to me, we need to not wait for the senior community to come to the council with their ideas of what they want this to look like. We need to be going to them. So we need to be out in our communities, asking them, surveying them, what do you want? What do you want this to offer you? Because you're the ones that are going to be using it. So I've heard from some that they want meeting rooms. Some talk about the things that the YMCA doesn't offer them. There's no ramps. They can't use the walking tracks. These are the things we need to be considering and making sure the senior centers have ramps and they can walk. And so we just need to be out in the community, surveying them, talking to them, go have coffee with them and have a conversation, and you will know all you need to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Our fifth question is much less complex. Sorry about that. We'd like to have our last question actually feed into your closing remarks. As a senior center is successful only if seniors participate. How would you encourage the city to engage with the seniors community? That is, how are we going to make sure that the efforts that we're undertaking, how would you as a council person try to help us make sure that our efforts accomplish what we're trying to actually accomplish? Kate, your question, and then if you'll follow with your closing remarks.
All in 2 minutes?
Can we give them 3?
Okay. Squeezed out an extra minute there.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that.
So, as I touched on a little earlier, I think one of the big ways that we need to engage the senior community is, as has been said a little earlier, go to where they are. I've gotten a lot of valuable feedback from the seniors who live in the complexes in Ward 1 and the seniors who are attempting to age in place in their own homes. And they have told me what they believe the failures of the current senior center are and what they'd like to see the city offer in the future. A number of things have already been said today: greater handicap accessibility, walking tracks that they can walk on, a pool that they don't need to be, trying to maneuver around a bunch of kids to use, making sure that the commercial kitchen moves from the existing senior center into the new senior center, because Meals on Wheels, having that in the senior center is critical. And so doing that, like I said, we can't just check off the box and say that we've reached out to the senior community by having only the people who serve on the ad hoc committee give feedback. I know that their feedback will be extremely valuable, and I'm not discounting that. But we have a number of seniors who live in this community who have a different vision and a different set of needs than those on the ad hoc committee, and we need to make sure that their voices are being heard. And so, kind of leading into my closing statement, is that this is what we need to be doing. Our outreach needs to be intentional, and the policies that city council works on needs to be intentional. My mother ran an outpatient elderly care facility, a PACE program, in 3 different states. And so I, through her, kind of via osmosis, have learned a lot about what seniors face, not only just in Norman, but in different parts of the country. And so one of the things that I'm really interested in working on is additional accessibility housing ordinances, because one of the big things that I heard from many of the seniors living in Ward 1 is that they're not sure that they'll be able to stay in their home for the rest of their lives, but they don't know where else they can afford to go. And so making sure that we are addressing these issues, the quality of life and just their ability to stay in Norman, is something that we as a council need to make a priority, because as we have said tonight, there are 26,000 seniors living in this community, and I want them to stay through their last days. And so I have already taken steps to make sure that we get to where we're at with the senior center. I am unapologetic in using the rule of 3 to get us to this point. And this is what I will continue to do in the future. I do some things quietly, like a community ad hoc committee that I'm serving on right now, and I do a few things loudly, like with the rule of 3. But my commitment is there, and my commitment will be there through a second term.
Thank you, Kate. Sean, how would you encourage the city to engage the senior community as we go forward?
You know, I'm always a fan of first asking people how they want to be communicated with. And so I think that if we could cast a wide net, because there are some senior citizens that I met in my ward who it was very important for them to connect via Facebook, but others who said, I just want somebody to talk to me. I want to see something in the paper. I want to see you out in the community. You know, funny enough, one person said, you know, I want somebody on city council who's like Bria. She's just everywhere. And because she's everywhere, I can address things, or I can talk to her and get connected with her. And so we certainly know that the people who live in our area want to be talked to. They want to have a connection. They want to get into relationship with city council members. That's why early and when I spoke in a fury for that last question, I talked about the importance of the ad hoc committee, just getting more people to join that conversation, because that's incredibly important. We want to make sure that folks know that people support what they help create. And we want them to create a wonderful center with the support of city council. So I also think that we should really look as city council members, should I make it there, at figuring out how we're going to do a social marketing plan ourselves. I mean, so what does that marketing look like? How do we encourage people to show up? You know, is it simply, like I said earlier, a ward meeting for all wards in which the focus is on seniors and getting seniors to the senior center? I understand that most people don't join things because, you know, I don't know anybody there. I don't know what to expect. And kind of like when I was at my 6th grade dance and the boys were on one side and the girls were on the other. We just didn't know what to do, and we just needed somebody to say, like, you know, it's okay, or someone to step out. So that part is important, because one of the things I've heard you say is that you want young people to participate with you. And we don't want to see the 6th grade dance. We want those young folks to feel like they are connected with you. We certainly want you to have a voice in your planning. But I think if you're going to think towards sustainability, it's always good to have somebody like myself, a 40-something-year-old, who's going to say in 20 years, you've modeled what it looks like to be a healthy senior in this community, because you still have a responsibility to be a mentor. And I appreciate your mentorship. I also appreciate you all for having me come tonight. Again, I will always end with saying people support what they help create. And I certainly want to be part of helping you all create something great in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Richard, if our success depends on engagement, how would you try to affect that?
Okay, Bob, your first question about participation. If you try to estimate the participation in our new 21st Century Center, you can use the Oklahoma City experience as somewhat of a base. Oklahoma City built a modified 21st century model, and I believe it provides less than what we're actually going to envision here in Norman. But if you use their participation rate, adjusted for the population differences, you can easily project 350 people a day using our new senior center. And that's now. You can probably double that number when all the rest of the people at this dais get up to the age of being able to use that. So I believe that the vision that we have for this new senior center will be so successful that the participation will amaze you. That said, I do think we need to do a significant amount of reach out to people, and I would like to see a citizens organization like the Norman Seniors Association drive that communications effort. So, to my closing. I would like to use my closing time to thank Allison and Patrick for the quality of the campaign we've had in Ward 3. We have now sat together for 5 different forums, and not once has there been anything said other than sincere words about difficult issues. I've come to really admire Patrick's speaking style and his timing ability with a humorous remark, and I've developed a real respect for Allison's desire to make things better for all of our citizens. I also want to say to the voters of Ward 3, you are lucky to have 3 good choices for your city council representative. We all 3 view the issues with a slightly different perspective, but there are no bad choices up here. So you will have to think hard about what's most important to you when you make your decision. But what I urge you to do is to make a choice and go vote. Do not give away your right to choose your representative. I want to thank the Norman Seniors Association for hosting this forum, and I want to thank all of you who have watched it for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Patrick, how would you encourage the city to engage with the seniors community?
If you build it, they will come. I think that's the first step. We need to get ground broken on this. You can't participate in a building that doesn't exist. And so that's the first and biggest step, is getting the building there, getting the programs developed, and then we have the foundation that we need to really get everyone involved. But we've got a lot of time between now and then. You know, at best, we're talking about 2 full years from now before we're able to actually get the building in place. And I think we can use that time to reach out to the community and say, hey, look what's coming. We've got this that's in the pipeline. We've got this that's being planned. Participate in the planning. Come be a part of the process. Be part of the change you want to make. And through doing that, I think that we'll have a lot more of the community ready to be a part of this senior center once it opens up. I think that it's important to get families as a whole involved. It's not enough to just go to our seniors and say, hey, come hang out with other seniors. We want to get their grandchildren involved. We want kids saying, hey, let's go to that great place where you hang out. Let's go and work together on arts and crafts. Let's go tell some stories. We want to make sure that it's an inclusive center as we're building an inclusive community. And that brings me to my closing statement. I feel that Norman has a really unique opportunity here as one of the most welcoming cities in the state, and I think in the country, to really develop that inclusiveness and to bring it to all of its citizens, not just those of us who are spry and dashing about knocking on doors, but those who want to take a little more time and enjoy their path through life. And so I think that if elected, I will be able to provide a wonderful source of outreach to our community. I intend to be open and listening to all of Norman's citizens and to be able to provide you with a voice as far as what you want to see City Council do. You're all here tonight on your free time to listen to us talk about how great we are, and hopefully that commitment is something that will be reflected in our responsibilities and our obligations to you once we're up here sitting as members of the decision-making body of the city. And I think that it's important that as we look at that we examine the options that we have available to us. And I hope that you will choose me as your city council representative as we move forward into the 21st century, not only with this senior center, but with our inclusive community to build a better relationship between all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Stephen, it goes to you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Stephen, you're going to have to wait. Allison, it's your question.
Okay, so I think I jumped the gun on the last one. Basically, I answered this already. And what I had said before was add value, to bring people in, to keep it relevant, to keep the building alive and not just a building. We always want to keep having fresh ideas. When I said PT, OT, pharmacy, these are just ideas, but add value to the people. I answered that before. So I want to echo what Richard had said. This has been a pleasure. He has been just remarkable to learn from and to learn with. This has been a new experience for all three of us, and I'm very grateful that it's gone as well as it has, and it's been great to get to know you as well. We've had fun, I think. You know, this really has been an experience. One of your questions on this page that we didn't ever really get to was why particularly city council, what intrigues you about that? And aside from being a policy wonk, representation is the largest for each individual person at the city council level. It may not be the sexiest. We may love, you know, talking about the presidency and it gets huge voter turnout, but it really ought to be city council that gets the largest turnout because this is the area, this dais affects your life for the better or for the worse every single day. The decisions made up here are huge. And that's why I ran. I mean, there are people in this city who it's like they don't even exist sometimes. And I know that we have compassionate hearts in this city and we don't want it to be that way. So it comes down to public policy. And it comes down to saying, we're going to invite you all to the table and we're going to make sure that you're heard. And then we're going to implement public policy that answers what you had to say. I wish that we had had time to talk at other forums, not this one particularly, but about other issues happening in this city, like, you know, addiction and ADA issues and mental health issues and domestic violence and children. And I mean, we have a lot of areas that are challenges, but we can meet them together because we have the hearts to do it. And I have the drive to do it. And I really hope that when you all will get out to vote on February 12th and that you will think this isn't just a one issue type of election. There are a lot of issues, not that we haven't even had a chance to cover. And I'm up to the challenge and I want to make people's lives better. Thanks.
Thank you, Allison. Now, Stephen.
So Ward 7, most of the OU campus is in Ward 7. So most people think that Ward 7 is just mostly students. But I can tell you, after representing Ward 7 for the last nearly 6 years, there are a lot of senior citizens that live in Ward 7. There are senior citizens that live in one-bedroom apartments and have almost nothing. There are senior citizens in Ward 7 that have very nice big houses on a golf course. There's a very wide range of demographics of senior citizens in Ward 7. And for me, my job is to go out to those people and listen to what is on their mind about what's going on in their lives, what their plans are for the future they have, and what can we be doing better at City Hall to provide services to them. How could we make a better senior citizen center for them? So again, my job is to go out to them and talk to them directly and listen. One of the pros about my day job at the Friendly Market is people can all day long can come see me and talk to me about city issues. And our biggest customer base is senior citizens at the store. Monday and Wednesday nights, I work the door at the Deli, a music venue on Campus Corner. It's a very old music venue, and the crowd is actually an older crowd generally. So I have a lot of senior citizens that stay up late that will come down to Campus Corner and talk to me at the door for a little while about what's going on. So there's lots of different ways, including social media as well, where you can get input from people. Most of my campaign contributions, about 75%, I would say, are from senior citizens in Norman. And my entire time on council, or at least since the idea was first brought to us, I have always supported the idea of the standalone senior center and a way to get there. And I know it's taken a long time, but I have never wavered in my support of that idea. And it's not going to be next to the new library like I would have preferred, but I'm very happy that we're going to be able to get it done finally. Things about me and why I'm running again. I have gone to the Oklahoma Supreme Court and successfully held this city and our police department accountable. I have successfully done that my entire time on council, holding our city staff accountable, holding this council accountable, and holding myself accountable. I will always listen to everybody as a representative up here. It doesn't matter what political party you come from or what your background is, your economic background, it doesn't matter. My door is always open. I will always listen, and I will always be an advocate for you at this city hall. This is your city hall, and my job is to be your voice here. So I'm asking that on Tuesday, you cast your vote to reelect me to a 4th term and let me continue to help lead this city in a positive direction so that generations in the future can enjoy this city and our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Kyle, how would you encourage the city to engage the seniors community?
Thank you, Bob. And I love this question about engagement. And the reason why I like it is because engagement is one of the 5 values that we have at the Norman Regional Health System, along with integrity, communication, attitude, and results. I think engagement is actually a fantastic word, but let's kind of break apart that word a little bit. You know, what is comprised with engagement? And the very first component of engagement is being present. You have to be present to where people are. And I think we've heard a lot of talk tonight about, or a lot of discussion about, you need to go to where people are. And I think that is a great first step. The next part is not just being present, but it is also listening. Okay, so we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth. We've all heard that saying, you know, for a reason. And so my mother told me that several times. And so, but we need to listen to what the needs are of folks. And then the next part about that is that engaging in a good dialogue is we also have to have buy-in. We have to be able to look at things from somebody else's perspective. And I think when you combine all of those and you work towards mutual purpose, which I think the longer you speak with someone, the more that you will find that you have in common with them than you actually have different. When it comes to engaging this community, as I've mentioned before, I was a paramedic for 15 years. I've run 911 calls in every part of Norman, including a lot on seniors. I have seen independent living. I've seen assisted living. I've seen nursing homes. I've seen a variety of combinations. And I've also gotten to see what happens when people do not engage with seniors. And so some of the themes that I've kind of written down for tonight, one is advocacy. Who is going to advocate for seniors? And so I think having the ad hoc group is great, but we also need to have council member representation who is actively advocating for your seniors. Another one of the themes that I've written down for tonight is relevancy. When we go back to the budget question, the reason why I believe that it was discussed on putting into the city manager's budget or wherever it's going to be is relevancy. And so, and really another way of saying that is, do we still matter? Yes, we do. Please listen to us. Please pay attention to us. We are part of this community. And I believe if elected to council, I could be that advocate by making sure that seniors stay relevant in 2019. Back to why I'm running for city council. As I've mentioned, I've been paying attention to this for several years after graduating from the Leadership Norman program. I believe that one of the skill sets that I possess is that of leadership. I think that I have proven that time and time again in my workforce, whether as an EMS supervisor, or as bringing new business into Norman Regional, or serving as an ER systems manager, in which I took our patient satisfaction scores from the bottom 5 percentile to 60th percentile in 6 months. That requires leadership. It requires my staff to do that. They're the ones doing the hard work, but it all begins with leadership, and that is a quality that I would like to bring to the city council and to the city. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Kyle. Kim, you want to take us to the house?
Thanks, Bob. I'm kind of like Allison down there, where I kind of touched on a little bit of this earlier in one of my responses. But I will say that local officials, whether you're on city council or you're mayor of Norman, we need to go, like I said, out to where our constituents are versus announcing a location that's only meaningful to us, to the official. So as an elected official, your most important job is to listen, as Kyle said. And I did touch on an idea of going to the local diner on Main Street and sitting down and having coffee early in the morning and engaging with the residents that are there. You could hold regular coffee meetups, inviting community members. So it's going out into the community where they are. So since the land for the senior center is pretty secured, and that's pretty much a go. It's important to get feedback from the senior community. And like I said, this could be done in a multiple of ways, but we definitely need to be getting their level of interest. So, like I said, I've heard from several of the ways that the YMCA doesn't meet their standards, and the water's too cold. Like I said, there's no ramps. So these are all things that need to be considered. So they're legitimate concerns that need to be considered when designing the senior center. So we need to ensure that this feedback and concerns are heard and taken into account. So I will go into my closing, and I will start by thanking Stephen and Kyle. This was really fun, and it was a neat experience for me, I think, as being a teacher, because I got to go back to my students after each forum and talk to them about this, and they get just as excited as I do. I was at work today, and I was going over my responses, and one of my students was like, "What are you doing?" And so I was reading these to her, and she just was so intrigued and was just like, "Tell me more about it and everything. I wish she was here." And so it's been a very neat experience. I'm glad to live in a place and a time that it's okay for me to run for city council. So we've come a long way. And so for this experience and for inviting me here tonight, I just want to say thank you to all of you, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Kim. Well, for our closing, I want to make sure that I get the chance to thank all of you for coming here for our forum. I want to make sure that the audience understands, and I can say this from my own experience because I've done what you are doing tonight. It's a difficult thing. And it's just another area of our community that you've had to get up to speed on and try to come up with thoughtful responses to questions that you hope you understand, and hopefully I articulated from time to time. And I appreciate it, and I hope that our audience and our viewers at home appreciate that you all are just Norman citizens. There's no training class to do this. You come here pretty cold and try to give reasonably good answers and exhibit some leadership. And I really appreciate the answers tonight. I think everybody has given answers that have actually added to our ideas and added to our understanding about how important our seniors are for this community and how important this facility is going to be in terms of making our community a better community. So I thank you. We'll break for a few minutes for a reset and have the mayoral candidates. I'm gonna see if I can. I think so. Will do.
I have to go, man. I gotta shake hands real quick and then take off. But I will read the article. Well done. You're moderating well.
Thank you. Are we ready? Good evening. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Norman Seniors Association Candidate Forum. This is our mayoral race portion of the forum. Although the seniors have decided not to endorse a candidate this year, we did want to provide a forum as a means of giving our candidates the opportunity to tell us just where they stand on our issues, to offer us their commitments to the things that we think are important in our community. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the city staff for helping us put these forums on, and I'd like to recognize Council Member Sarita Wilson from Ward 5. Very nice to have her here. We appreciate all of the support that you've given us over the years, and we're happy to have you remaining on council to help us even more. As a politically active group of citizens from Norman, our main focus has been to secure both a site and funding for seniors' facilities. But it's our hope that the building itself serves to facilitate a better quality of life for all of the citizens of Norman. What this means to us as citizens is that we anticipate our city will embrace our mission to provide services and programs for Norman seniors and their families. And we want it to be services and facilities that will cross all of the usual barriers such as race, gender, and disability. Because the execution of this effort means so much to our community, we'll be asking for our candidates' thoughts and hopefully commitments to move the funding for the seniors facility and the seniors programs from Parks and Recreations Department to the City Manager's Department, where we believe it will have a closer eye and a better chance of sustaining competition for funds without diminishing the city's commitment to the senior services that will be so important for us. Tonight, our candidates for mayor have been given, well, they've been given the questions ahead of time because we want them to have had the time to read the questions, think about what those questions mean to them, and offer us their best thoughts. We didn't want anybody to feel ambushed. We didn't want anybody to feel at a disadvantage. And I'll do my best to state those questions well and stay on point with the questions. Our mayoral candidates will be given 2.5 minutes for each question. Pardon me? Oh, they'd be whole minutes. Then, well, let's give them 3 minutes because they're worth it. And then we'd like to give them 4 minutes to close if they need it. I'm going to do this one more time. Did it. Good evening, candidates. We're going to ask that you introduce yourself, making note of the following points, mostly what influenced you to become in public service, to become involved in public service, and why did you decide to run for office? Particularly, why did you decide that you wanted to run for the mayor's office? We'd like you to tell us what you think your experiences and your specialties are that you bring to this office, and how you think that that can best affect Norman. Evan, I'd like to start with asking that question of you.
Sure. Thank you, Bob, and thank you to the association for hosting this, and also thank you for the lifesavers. It just so happened that I brought some toothbrushes. Dollar Tree. 3 for $1. You gotta love Dollar Tree. My name is Evan Dunn. My family goes back several generations. My grandmother was a little farm girl in Waukeeta, Oklahoma, and my grandfather came down here after he got his PhD and worked at the university and tried to help contribute to setting up KGOU and OETA, and they really laid the groundwork for engaging and trying to take the knowledge that was coming about. I think it's really hard for us, given how technologically dominant our society has become, to appreciate and put ourselves in that time period when you had a limited understanding of knowledge. You didn't have access to infinite information on the internet, and that has influenced both my parents and my siblings and myself. And I feel selfish for not having done this before, for not having really put myself out there. And I think that's because I feel like my experiences, whether it's traveling to China or working in the Bahamas, getting an international business degree, reading Chomsky, reading Kissinger, really delving into these opposing political views and cultural views, I feel like I've synthesized it, and I've got enough experience observing the macro geopolitical dynamics that influence our lives in some way, and the micro municipal side has been catalyzed by my interest that has persisted over the past 7 years. And I feel like I'm ready to take this on. I feel like I can use the title of mayor, I can use being engaged to give me a reason to learn even more, to really kind of figure out how best to connect the dots and to maximize the city's efficacy and its efficiency. Why did I want to run? I think it's all that. It's my whole life. I feel like I'm in the perfect place at the perfect time, and I'm around the perfect people. It's been awesome being up here with these two. Because neither one of them is going anywhere. So I feel like I need to be a part of the decision-making process. And I feel like I've got the time, I've got the tools, I've got the talent, and I want to be here. So thank you for coming and Karen.
Thank you, Evan. Bria?
Thank you. Well, I first ran for city council because I wanted to connect residents to local government. After years of being involved in a variety of leadership roles, I felt disconnected to this level of local government and didn't feel like I had a relationship with my council representative. And so I ran and was successful, and I believe I've also been successful in building those relationships and creating awareness about not only local government, but the services we provide and the events that we have in our city. And I'm running for mayor because strong communities deserve strong leadership. Our community is facing several major challenges right now, but I believe we are still a strong community with many opportunities before us. And to realize our full potential, we need someone who can bring us together to move us forward. Skills-wise, I do have a legal background, but my entire professional career has been centered on two things: integrity and leadership. It's been an honor to help shape tomorrow's leaders at the University of Oklahoma, and I have used that same mentor mentality as a council member to, again, connect people to local government, from everything like Clark in the Park events to creating presentations on municipal government that I've shared with after-school programs in a variety of our schools. I have a track record of positive hands-on leadership and a decade of leadership experience underneath my belt. My strengths focus on collaboration and relationship building, and that is exactly the kind of mayor we need right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Bria. Bill?
2 or 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
I ran for city council because I'm a public servant. I believe in service above self. I'm not a politician. I know some people laugh when I say that, but I'm not up here to be a politician. I have no interest in any kind of higher office. I volunteered to serve in the U.S. Air Force and attend the U.S. Air Force Academy. And since that time, I've been a soccer coach on my girls' soccer team. I've been a Boy Scout leader and all kinds of other community types of volunteer positions, from Blue Thumb volunteer to get in the creek and test the quality of the water, to being an active member on the Historic District Commission. And I want to take that service to the next level by being a mayor. But my leadership style and time I've been on council has not been one to just protect and maintain the status quo. I'm not one just to go along and get along. Rather, when I ran for office, I saw that we had problems and we had challenges and we needed bold leadership. We had issues like historic homes in central Norman being torn down. We had crumbling sidewalks and infrastructure deteriorating. We had traffic and road congestion and bridges washing out. We had flooding from a 2008 master plan that had not been addressed. We had bound projects from road projects to 2012 that had not been broken ground. I knew that we needed leadership, yes, but we didn't need the kind of leadership that was going to continue to do things the way that they've always been done. We needed somebody who was willing to stand up and push and get things accomplished and to be collaborative. And that's what I have done. Being collaborative means more than saying you're collaborative. It actually means doing it with examples, because the people deserve to know a proven track record. My proven track record of collaboration includes multiple council members like Stephen Tyler Holman, collaborating with him on a medical marijuana ordinance even before the state question was passed. Councilmember Wilson on agritourism with wedding venues, which we just had the first one approved by this city council in the last council meeting. Collaborating with Councilmember Castleberry to ensure that we stop spending more money than we're bringing in and rein in our fiscal responsibility to our taxpayers. Collaborating with Councilmember Bierman on changing tables so dads like me don't have to get on the ground in a bathroom to change their child. Collaborating with Councilmember Carter on things like preserving and protecting our tree canopy, which that tree ordinance will be voted on at the next council meeting. These are things that I have done that have either been already approved as council or in the pipeline to be approved. And I'm honored and thrilled to be able to work with all this many council members to ensure that we are actually getting things accomplished. I'm a veteran, I'm a small business owner, and I'm a trained mediator. All of those skills and experiences are things I will bring to the position as mayor to bring people together to find common ground like I have in my 3 years on council already to get things accomplished. We do need a leader who can get things done and one who has a proven track record. And I am that leader. I am the person who has accomplished things for this council and for this community. And I will continue to do that as your mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Part of our frustration as a group of people who are advocating for seniors and seniors' interests is it's taken us 4 years, and I know that all three of you are aware of that. It's taken us 4 years just to get to this point, and for some of us, it's been a much longer trek than 4 years. The amount of effort that seniors are that citizens in general have had to expend to overcome institutional resistance has wasted precious time and resources. Now that we have an agreement regarding the standalone senior center, and hopefully we have funding, and hopefully we have a site, we want to ask the question that we think is most relevant, and that is, I think everybody on the dais is aware that we've actually had a very strong majority of the council in favor of our agenda for the last, at least for the last 2 years, maybe 3 years. So as a group of active citizens, we've been able to lobby our city council people. They've listened to us. They've come to our side and promised to advocate for us. And eventually we had an entire unanimous council, and still not moving forward, still not getting things accomplished. And so one of the things that we want to know is that given the institutional resistance that we've faced, and we've watched other activist groups in our community face, we'd like to know how would you as a mayor address the problem that it poses for active citizens? The next issue is not likely going to be a seniors issue. At one time, it was an animal shelter. We don't know what that issue is until a group of activists brings their issue to the government. And we'd like to know what you are willing to do, what you're prone to do to address the problem that we seem to have with this institutional resistance. Bria?
Thank you for that question. It is definitely an important one. I think not a single person on this council is proud of how long it's taken. I think we're all frankly embarrassed. I remember campaigning on it in 2016. I think we're all frustrated by it. But I will clarify, I don't think staff is willingly delaying this. I think that we all could have done better at the planning side of it. I think one of the biggest errors was the funding plan. And that is a huge, huge mountain we've been trying to overcome, and we have made progress on it. And I know that's not what you want to hear. I think we all want to get this done, but not only because we promised it, because it's the right thing to do. You know, that existing senior center is just shameful at this point. And so while I do think we have an incredibly hardworking staff, we have an incredibly lean staff. I think lean is putting it mildly. Public Works alone is missing 14 employees. So how can we expect them to juggle all of these projects and like this when we are not properly staffing as it is? And then we also have a council that tends to get a little distracted sometimes, where one minute this is the priority and the next minute it's bird scooters or it's other pet projects that we decide we're going to focus on, and we ask staff to do that. So I think it's not just staff that needs to stay focused, it's council that needs to stay focused. We have the location, we have funding options, and now you're just going to need a strong mayor who can push it through. One way to kind of counter institutional resistance, if there is any, is the rule of three. I don't like the rule of three because I think it avoids making people collaborate and have conversations and working as a team. And if any level of government should work as a team, it's the local one. There was a rule of three used for the senior center, and I wasn't asked about it. I would have happily signed off on it. So I don't think that's necessarily how we get things done. I think we can do better at the local level. So I think we need to fully fund staff. We need to do better with our planning and our budgeting and treat these projects seriously from the beginning, not just when our active citizens step up and say this isn't good enough. We need to do better at the start. And then we need to follow through and stay focused on what matters. Thank you.
Bria, thank you. Bill, the question is, how would you as mayor address the problem that institutional resistance poses for citizen-led initiatives? Or do you disagree that we have a problem at all?
I agree that there is a problem. And as I mentioned in my earlier comments, after 25 years of living in Norman and raising my kids here, I have the experience to address these kinds of challenges, and I have while I've been on council. Let me give you an example. In August 2017, I collaborated with Councilmember Wilson, Bierman, and Cargill at that time, and we presented a concept known as Generation Square to put the senior center with the indoor aquatic center and the indoor multi-sports facility. We did that at the council retreat. At that same council retreat, there was a counter proposal presented to put the seniors in the existing library. This was almost a year after I was elected to office, and very frustrated to see that was still on the table. We waited until the spring of 2018 to see if the current city leadership and the people that wanted to maintain the status quo were going to do something about our presentation and our ideas. When that did not happen, yes, we used the rule of three, because that's sometimes what it takes to stand up to institutional resistance, whether that's because of staff or leadership. I'm not going to point fingers, to get things done. And that's what we did. And I'm proud that we did. And I'm proud that Councilmember Clark supported my efforts and the other council members to take bold leadership to try to solve a problem that had been lingering and continues to linger in this community. This goes back to 2008 and the votes of 2015. This goes back to restoring public trust. And a respect for our seniors. I'm one who believes that we need to follow through on the things that we promised to the voters. In 2008, we promised to them that we were going to remodel the library and we were going to build a senior center. That didn't happen. In 2015, we promised the seniors that they were going to get a senior center, but the people in charge at that time did not include a budget for it. Not sure why. But now we need leaders who are going to solve problems. And I've been a creative problem solver, bringing forward initiatives and ideas to try to solve the problems like the senior center. And that's why I'm proud that I have the endorsement and support of former President Jim Jenkins and board members Nadine Jewell and Betty Mafucci and Dave Beck and many others involved in the senior projects, because they know that I have been a bold leader who has pushed for solutions and fought against institutional resistance. And it's not just been with the seniors. I've done that when staff and others in leadership said we should rubber stamp a 25-year franchise agreement. Me and others on council refused to do that and worked to improve that plan, and we are improving that plan, and we've already seen improvements in the downtown power grid for our small businesses and our citizens. We also refused to stand by when the UNP TIF and arena continued to drag on. Rather, we took bold action to amend the resolution brought forward by staff to ensure that the TIF would come to an end by removing the sales tax and the ad valorem tax. Those are the kind of things that I have actually done as a leader on council to stand up to institutional resistance for the people, because that's what the people told me they wanted. And that's what I will do as mayor.
Thank you, Bill. Evan, what are your thoughts on some of these problems that we've faced in the years, in the last few years?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. People who, everybody has probably seen my comments on the Facebook page about this. I am not at all in favor of a singular senior center. The idea about decentralizing them, like the libraries, at least having one on the north side, one on the south side, one on the west side, one on the east side, something that can enable the seniors to get to these gathering points with more ease. I grew up on the east side, and I think I went to Westwood maybe one time because it's just too far. We live in it's a large town it's a large city, and that makes it a challenge to get consensus because the seniors who are nearby the location, which, let me say this, 2.4 million for that space when we have recreational areas it's a misallocation of capital that could be going into enhancing the senior center itself. But I'm not sure who wrote the legalese for that contract, but I would like to see that reviewed and figure out a way for us to get out of it. One problem I think that's holding us back is we're not getting consensus from people about what it should feature. And so long as we don't get a consensus and we don't have a clear idea of what it's going to have in it, people aren't going to be excited. People aren't going to email their ward representatives and say, hey, I've seen what the plan is, And I like it. I want those features, and I can imagine how enhancatory they would be for me and my neighbors and all the other seniors in the city. Here's something that I thought of some time ago. All right, it's got to have hydrotherapy, right? Gravity works on us our entire lives. Our bodies fall apart. Here's another thing that I thought about for the hydrotherapy. Rather than it being sloped, let's have tiers, because people are going to be different heights. So if we have a 3-foot pool and then it goes down to a 4-foot, then to a 5-foot, I think it would accommodate more. It's got to have a commercial kitchen. I think we ought to have like a catnap dormitory for 3, 4, 5 people. This came to me just a moment ago. I think it needs to be open 24/7. I think about my grandmother and how her sleep schedule can be altered, and being able to go there whenever she wants would be awesome. Having like an MRI facility there, or an MRI facility that's available to everyone in the city, that's another way of infusing that health component, that it's a lifelong commitment. Food Forest Victory Gardens, and the other gal who was up here earlier, there should be a nursery or a preschool, and that intergenerational exchange is something that's critical. And
Okay.
we have the consensus about it.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you.
We need that. Thank you. That's a pity clap.
In my opening comments, I referred to the idea of moving the budget funding for the senior center and for the seniors programs out of Parks and Recreation, where we question its relevancy to the mission, and moving those budgeted funds into the office of the city manager and the department of the city manager, where not only would they be more front and center for the city manager, but also the and be more visible to the public, there would be more accountability for the funding of these projects and as we go forward. So, Bill, we'd like to know, would you be willing to move the budget for the senior center and its programs to the city manager's office so that it would not be in such direct competition with other city, with other departments for its funding?
Yes. Oh, you want me to elaborate? I'm just kidding. I'm a lawyer. I can talk for 3 minutes.
You need not elaborate.
Absolutely, I'd be open to the idea. And I'd like to use an analogy. As many people know, before I got on council, I was really active with the animal advocates and animal activists and working to improve our animal shelter. And over that period of time of the last, I don't know, 6 years or so, I've been involved in those efforts. We've had the similar kind of conversations because the animal welfare shelter is under the police department. And animal welfare is kind of not necessarily the highest priority to the police department. And I'm not criticizing them. I understand that it's not in their direct line of services, if you will, typically. And so we've had the conversation about moving animal shelter out from underneath the police department. It's something that I also am interested in pursuing. But like the seniors, I also think that it's important enough for our community that it's something that we should consider having it as a separate standalone office outside of the Parks Department, because let's be honest, the Parks Department's focus is not necessarily going to be on running a senior center. But I think what we could do is, and the discussions I've had with folks who I'd like to look at and consider, would be to couple the idea of a senior's office with Veterans Affairs and maybe with disability affairs or disability issues, to connect our seniors with other related groups and demographics like veterans, like myself, and those with disabilities who also very much could take advantage of the programming and the kinds of services we're going to have at the Senior Wellness Center at the same time. And I think there's a synergy there and a economy of scale of having a position or positions that could benefit all of those communities and all of those citizens in our community that fall within those different categories. But I will tell you that more importantly, the budget reflects a priority. And I think that at the present time, when I knock on doors, one of the things I hear from people is, how's the city continue to spend the money that it's spending? I mean, I can't spend money sitting around my kitchen table. You guys seem to be spending money like you're going out of style. And I agree. We have to be careful and cognizant of our budget and our spending. And some people have talked about how Councilmember Clark and I, as the two elected officials, have very similar voting patterns. But there are two important votes that I think do distinguish us on fiscal responsibility. One is that I voted against a budget presented by the manager that would have spent about $600,000 to $800,000 more than we were bringing in. She voted for that budget. I voted against reducing the rainy day fund so that we've taken money out of our savings account to be spent. I thought we did not need to do that. I did not think it was fiscally responsible. And I think as we move forward on who you're going to select to be your mayor, fiscal responsibility is something that people need to think about, because our budget is a matter of concern, and it's something that I've heard about from the doors from people. And that would be one of the things that I hope people to consider when they cast their vote for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Evan, would you be willing to require the budget process to move seniors funds into the department of the city manager?
Yeah, I do not have a problem with that. I feel like when we're talking about budgeting, it makes it easier if we approach fund inflows and our expenditures in such a way that we maximize our ability to generate revenue and to get funding, and we maximize our ability to reduce unnecessary expenses. Well, how do we do that? Well, an easy way is to raise taxes. An easy way is to sell bonds and to put more debt on young people. But there's a lot of ways in which we can reduce costs by mandating that city staff drive 5 miles per hour below the speed limit. We can reduce the amount of maintenance that goes into our parks. This thought came to me: what if instead of mowing the park every other week, what if we allowed it to become more of a wilderness retreat? You plow it up, you use a tractor, you let the kids in the neighborhood, you let the seniors, everybody throws seeds, just wildflowers, and we watch it grow. That's a way that we can reduce costs. We have huge wall space. What if we use that to be just advertisements? Every city automobile could become like a NASCAR billboard that's just driving around. This notion that I came up with a couple months ago, about selling war bonds, selling bonds to the individuals who are going to benefit from these services or will. It reduces the underwriter's expenses. It brings about kind of an investment from the bond holders in their city, and it becomes an investment for them. There's a lot of ways that we can achieve a more fiscally responsible and a long-term healthier environment for our community that makes the seniors feel included, young people all feel a part of it. And you look outside this door and you'll see that green herbicide that's sprayed. We are not protecting our soil. We are not investing in the actual substance of the community. And we have to recognize that importance and how we're wasting oil. We're wasting fuel. It all costs dollars somehow. I don't have a problem with it. Yes, if we need to do that in order to have dedicated funds, amen. Let's go for it,
All right. Thank you, Evan. Bria, what do you think?
I'm certainly open to reevaluating where the home of the administrator for the programming would be. I think it is always good to question what we've always done and see if we can find better solutions. I wouldn't feel comfortable having that discussion until we get a new city manager in place. So they would feel comfortable being the person that would execute that. But then look at what we've done with our retail coordinator. It's kind of a standalone position. So maybe it should stand next to Parks and Rec, not necessarily underneath it, maybe not necessarily under the city manager. So I think there's lots of options we could look at. My biggest concern is that we don't repeat the mistakes of the animal welfare shelter, where we have a state-of-the-art facility and we are not responsible in our budgeting for staff and programming. We need to be mindful of that. I want this to be the best center possible. I want to have the most diverse programming possible. I want to have great aspects of the facilities that we take care of. So it'd be great to have, something like maybe a pool that what if we put a pool in and we can't open it because we can't afford to keep fixing it? And that is a real possibility. So I think that's a way we need to look at the financing and the budgets of that. We're talking about being fiscally responsible. We keep creating ordinances that require positions that we can't afford. I don't want to make that mistake here either. If we create a separate office, are we going to be able to afford another position? Or is this going to be another wish list item that we have? So we've got to be better with, I think, increasing our revenue base as we move forward in that. And finally, I think another great way to be a little more fiscally responsible is to quit getting us in positions where we're getting sued all the time and spending money on legal fees. So I think there are different approaches in leadership and budgeting that you need to consider when deciding who to vote for mayor. I think that I've done a good job of being level-headed with that and making the best choices possible without overextending ourselves and being open-minded to new approaches to, I think, old problems.
Thank you. This next question was the bane of everybody in the last forum. So I'm going to read you the question and then let you pick it apart as you wish. What is the existing framework for the planning for the new senior center? That is, what is the role of the ad hoc committee and how will the selection of an architect work? What is being done about planning programs and what should the role of the general citizenry be in this process? When you take over as mayor, how will you shape this process? And I want to interject that last part of the question is probably the part that people care about the most. We're trying to decide who we want for mayor. And so we really are interested in how your approach and your personality and your values would play into shaping the process as this goes forward and try to make it successful. Evan, the first question is for you. The first answer is for you.
Yeah, thank you. Questions like these ascribe more power to the office of mayor than I think the mayor really has. The mayor quarterbacks a lot, yes, but the mayor can't dictate to the city manager or to anybody else in the decision-making process. But I think they should. I think the mayor ought to be an assertive, passionate, charismatic, dynamic articulator of why we need to do X, Y, Z. I'll go back through my list of features. Why this is important, why we need that, why do we need this? And if they really believe in it, if they're really desirous of establishing a family, establishing a home, and being a part of this community, I think it becomes easier for them to be a more passionate advocate that can get consensus from the other members of that body, whoever's making those decisions. And when we're selecting an architect, I like what Patrick said earlier. We have ample architects, and there's firms here who are more than capable of working with these concepts and the consensus that is achieved to design it so that it meets our needs and it has those features that we want to last and to be maintainable. Irrespective of whoever you select, you're going to get a strong personality, but that passion, that assertiveness, and that's the most important thing, I think. I don't have my clock. Am I going over time?
You're perfect. 3 minutes gets you a good applause line.
Thank you. That's what I think is most important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bria?
Well, we've already seen a proposed timeline for the construction of the senior center kind of in tandem with the other projects in Generation Square. And I really do love Kate's idea. I think that's going to be fantastic. I agree. We have a lot of experts in the community. When I've been knocking doors, I actually knocked on an architect who worked on the MAPS Wellness Center right here in Norman. So I know that they're here, and I think we need to do our research with that and someone that we're comfortable with, that we can trust. But I think we need to have extensive public input on this. And it can't be just the usual suspects. I'm grateful for this active senior citizen group. I think it has made the difference in moving this forward on a variety of levels. But I think we need to do more outreach. We need to get to our senior center type homes. We need to make sure that everybody's included and has a say in this. But then, as you know, Evan pointed out, a lot of people want a lot of different things. So that's going to be very challenging. So I think the ad hoc group should be representative of all these different groups. And I know that we're mindful of putting new people on ad hoc committees. But I feel like if we didn't put one of you on this ad hoc committee, it would be cries of outrage. But you've been around for a while. So I think we need to weigh that in putting together the ad hoc group. Done about planning programs. That goes right back to the feedback as well, but also back to budgeting. You know, I'd like to make sure that we have the kiln and all of that located at this site as well. There's a lot of really, really neat things that we could do. I want to make sure that there's a great computer center so you can get your lessons on how to Facebook with your great-grandchildren and all that fun stuff. But that all costs money. So, and we've seen it like with the East Branch Library, which is in my ward. It was originally supposed to have a screened porch around the outside, and everyone was really excited about that. And it didn't make the cut. And so I don't want that to happen because I feel like our senior citizens have been lied to enough. Even if we didn't mean to, it certainly feels like that. And so I don't want to say, yes, you can have X and Y and Z, and then at the end be like, oh, well, you know, that's not really feasible. You understand. And so I'd really like to avoid that by being honest and taking our time with getting input and making sure that we do it right on that end. And again, sticking with the budget. That's a tricky part right now. We have an idea of what our budget is. And then I've seen a long list of requests of things they want from the center that I don't know if it necessarily fits in there. Do we make it fit in the budget, or do we look for ways to expand the budget? So it's not just programming that we have to look at. It's not just design that we have to look at. It's all of these major pieces. But I am very happy that we, again, continue to make progress on this.
Thank you, Bria. I think that I did. I was going to leave that till the last, and I don't think it's going to make the cut. Well, we'll see how we do for time. We're pretty close for time. I have an idea. Bill?
Well, since Evan usually brings props like U.S. Army Survival Manual, I brought the book I mentioned that I've been reading, The Process Matters. And when I read this question, I thought about this book I've been reading because the process does matter as far as getting citizen buy-in and participation and engagement in a process to make it a successful process. But then I also thought about my old friend, Art Bripole, and how disappointed I was that Art's not here and is not going to be here when we finally, you know, get this senior center done and to be a part of this ad hoc committee. And things like that just reinvigorate me to ensure that we do get this done. But as far as the ad hoc committee, it's very important that we collaborate with the citizens. I love the idea that we have an ad hoc committee and that they are going to be at the forefront of bringing this discussion forward. We need to have forums. I know there's been some discussion. I've been talking to my friend Dave Beck about the ideas of having a forum and bringing in experts that have designed senior and wellness centers to ensure that we are getting the best ideas possible for our seniors in Norman from around the country and around the world. That needs to be not just with regard to the design of the building itself, but the programming that happens inside that facility that's focused on and designed for seniors. You know, the kind of swimming pool that a kid might use is not the same kind of swimming pool that a senior might need, which is more likely to be something like a warm saltwater pool. So we need to be smart and thinkful about how we are designing the programming and the facility so that it's for seniors. Just like was mentioned earlier, the track. I'm a member of the YMCA. You have to go up the stairs to get to the indoor track. And hey, I'm getting close to being a senior myself now. And I know that going up and down those stairs can be hard on my old knees. Too many days of playing football, I guess, or something. But we do have to bring in these experts. But the main thing is in this process, we have to listen to what our seniors want. They are the fastest growing demographic in our city, and they deserve to be listened to with respect. And I think those are important things that sometimes get forgotten. We have to listen, and we have to listen to them with respect and not argue and not discount what they're saying. Because as I've been knocking doors, one of the things that I hear from people on situations like this is, oh, you guys are going to have your meetings and your committees, but you're going to do what you're going to do. You're just going through the process. And no, as your mayor, that will not be the way things will be. It will be a true process of listening with mutual respect and moving forward together in a collaborative fashion to bring to the people what it is that they want and what they need. And an important part of this conversation is going to be the hiring of the new city manager, who will be the person who will help to oversee this overall process, because this is going to take some time, and we're going to have a new city manager. And that city manager needs to bring forward two key things to this conversation. One, a customer service oriented attitude with the new culture at City Hall to listen to the people and to be a representative for the people.
Thank you, Bill. And now for question 4. So what I'll have you do, I think we have 4 minutes or 3. I'm going to try to combine, I'll try to combine this 4th question or this last question with your closing remarks. So it's a short question, and it might actually help you segue into your closing remarks. The senior center is successful only if seniors participate. How would you encourage the city to engage with the seniors community? And Bria, you're first up, and then feel free to
close after
that.
So communication, I think, is one of my strengths. So that's why I was so excited about this question. I think, again, you have to get out there. You have to meet people where they are. Again, grateful for everyone that's spoken up, but there are a lot more other senior citizens that I know want to be involved and are watching the process. It could be little things like creating its own Facebook page, not relying on Parks and Rec to run it, or regardless of where it ends up, it needs to be, I think, its own entity. I think that we need to have regular community events. Someone had mentioned like a tailgating open to anyone right there. I thought that was fantastic, and I love cross-generational programming. We've said that enough. If that doesn't happen, I'm going to be crushed, because I'm really excited about that. And I missed the earlier part of the forum, but Evan, you mentioned that it was probably somebody mentioned the daycare and whatnot. Oh, yeah. I think that's fantastic. So things like that, the senior forum that's coming up on March 22nd, that's going to be fantastic in our planning process, but why make it just a one-time thing? Why not make it an annual thing where people come to Norman, Oklahoma to have discussions about what senior wellness and senior living looks like in a strong community? So I think that's something that we can continue. We have this giant place right down here. It's got a bunch of big buildings on it, lots of smart people in it. And I think that's a wonderful resource. It could be everything from physical therapy to, keeping your mind sharp. That's another thing. I think we need to make sure that part of the programming, I was talking to somebody about this, knocking on doors. Again, we're knocking on a lot of doors, where they used to have free classes at the senior center, where it was like meteorology and stuff like that. It wasn't any tests or anything, but it was a great way, I think, to stay active, not only physically, but mentally. So there's a lot of great ideas on, I think, ways we continue that. I'm going to shift now into my closing statement, because this is our last big forum. Thank you for hosting. I appreciate the opportunity. This whole experience of running for mayor has been wonderful. It really has. It's had its ups and downs, but it's been an experience that I will always treasure. I've learned a lot about myself, and I've learned an awful lot about my city. And something I already knew, but this experience has further confirmed, I have the best partner and I am the luckiest woman alive. So Kevin, if you're watching, thank you and I love you. But this is not about us. It's not. It's about Norman residents and who they want to lead our city. It's about who we want to be the face of our city as we navigate some very difficult issues in a time of change in our community. I have the experience, the dedication, the temperament, and the focus to bring us together to move us forward as our next mayor. I'll say it again, strong communities deserve strong leadership. And that is why I'm asking for your vote on February 12th. Thank you.
Thank you, Bria. Bill?
Oh.
Would you like me to read the question again?
Sure.
A senior center is successful only if seniors participate. How would you encourage the city to engage with the senior community?
Thank you, Bob, for that question. It's like I've said in other forums, we have to go to the people. We have to go to the seniors. We can't just be communicating at them. We have to be listening to them. And that means going to, for example, the existing senior center, going to coffee shops and actively engaging with the seniors to hear what's important to them and to get them involved. Give them an opportunity to be a part of the process, and they will have more buy-in to the ultimate outcome of what the senior center looks like in the design and in the programming. There are other things we could do to make them aware of events. We could have regular town hall meetings on this topic and go into different parts of town and communities and to try to get to people more easily. We could put information in utility bills. We could go do things like an art walk. I remember back in the day when Jennifer Robertson and some of my friends that are here, like Mary Catherine Long, did a flash mob at the art walk. We could do fun things like that to get people involved and to get them active as a part of the process and to get them engaged. We have to build a collaborative environment in which, one of the examples I like to use of my abilities to do collaborative solutions is the first pilot project in the state of Oklahoma for energy efficient homes. No one can tell me the last time they remember a solution that both the builders and the environmentalists in Norman supported. But I helped to bring those two groups together to create the first pilot, the incentive program for energy efficient homes. And so that's the kind of leadership style that I have. And I think that through that kind of collaboration, we can get things done. We have a wonderful town. I'm going to shift into my closing. But we need an experienced leader to get things done. Flooding is getting worse and is threatening people's property and lives. Traffic congestion, as many people know in this town, is a nightmare. Sometimes people tell me it takes them longer to drive across Norman than to drive to Edmond. And for some of our citizens who rely upon public transit, like our disabled community, it takes them sometimes hours or days to get to needed medical appointments. And that's not acceptable in this town. And that's why we need an independent voice to deal with the University of Oklahoma on those kinds of issues. We also aren't bringing quality jobs to Norman so that people like me who have children who are college age who want to stay in Norman can stay in town. We've got to have a mayor who can work and roll up their sleeves to bring quality jobs to Norman to ensure that next generation of children are able to stay here. I've worked with people to solve problems and get results. I've given you examples tonight of the actual work that I have done, the results that I have delivered for this community, and that's the kind of mayor I will be for you. Not just talk, but I will deliver actual results and get things accomplished. I will work with staff, council, and community partners to build and the people of this community to address our challenges and to move our city forward. Norman is a wonderful place to live and to raise a family. I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe that, and I wouldn't be running for mayor. We can do better, though, and I have the experience, and I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get to work. I thank you for your time tonight, and I humbly ask for your vote on February 12th. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Evan?
After each one of these forums, I've reflected on it, and I've realized that there's something that I didn't mention, or there's somebody that I should have thanked that I didn't thank. And so let me do that first. This has been fun. I really enjoy being with people who care, and Bill and Bria have both been super supportive and encouraging, and I've learned a lot from both of you. Not just coming to city council meetings, but to watch you prepare and how you've handled yourselves. So thank you for just being who you are. Bria mentioned that this isn't about us. I would like to say that it is a little bit about me. I am a little narcissistic, just a little bit. So maybe not totally. Bill mentioned something that I think is, it does reinforce this other idea that I've got to keep coming back to it. The decentralized approach, I think, really needs to be integrated to how we rethink a lot of these Norman Forward programs. If it takes people more time to get across town and the transportation is, because it is a problem, why don't we decentralize it so that that doesn't discourage the participation? And another aspect of that is we have to be in perpetual campaign mode, I think. We can't just go knock on doors every 2 years whenever we're coming up for re-election. We need to have staffs. Each city council person, I don't want to go back 100 years, but when this city was founded, when the charter was put in place, it was a lot smaller community. And it's grown by 4 times over the past 30, 40 years. And I think we need to multiply the paid staff that each city council person has so that they can have people who are out there knocking on doors in their wards, giving them info. And with that, we have to change the charter. And this is a little bit on you. I need you, we need you to email your city council representatives and say, look, I'm behind you on this. I want you to get paid. I want you to be devoting more of your time to understanding these problems and solving them. If people are paid a living wage for the usage of their neurological capacity for understanding problems and synthesizing new solutions, we're going to get better performance. We're not going to have the institutional brakes put on a lot of these projects if the city is kind of providing that reciprocity that motivates people to run for council and to not just use it as a resume line. I think that's one reason that I want the title of mayor, because the ideas about energy wastage and the excessive use of oil, we need to take that to a state and a national level. The culture is becoming vulgarized. We've got casino corrosion. We've got a spectacle industry that's way overblown. And we don't think about how, we have sewage treatment. The people in Sierra Leone don't. The people in the favelas of Rio de Janeiro don't. How do we inculcate this sense of reverence for the experience that we get living in Norman? If we enhance that, then it's inevitable that people are going to be more vested and that they're going to want to get out, and that whoever becomes the staff persons for the council members and the mayor, they're going to be motivated and inspired. And I can use the title of mayor. I see myself saying, calling people up, calling different school districts, calling different cities, and saying, hey, I'm mayor of Norman, Oklahoma, and I'd like to come speak to your city council. I'd like to come speak to your school and give an inspirational speech.
Thank you.
The mayor can do that. So on February 12th, if you want to send a message about the need for assertive, passionate leadership,
thank you, Evan.
have another option aside from
We got you.
two amazing people.
We got you, Evan. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
The Norman Seniors Association and I personally would like to thank you all for having the courage to run for mayor. I know it's a really difficult task, and I know you have to put up with things that you never dreamed you'd have to put up with. There are not a lot of people in our community that will go through the fire that you guys have gone through, and we all appreciate the fact that you'll do that. Regardless of who makes it to the final mayor's seat, we're confident that we will have a strong personality, a strong mayor, and we know as seniors that we have your full support, and we appreciate that. Thank you for coming tonight.